everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renée Jordan, and today we are going to pick up where we left off with the AI for Student Success Homework Health Lab. And so to help prepare me for this, I did go ahead and ask Janaya GPT to help me create information that I can insert as an example. So this is a note that I want to share with you to make that clear. For this test run, I am stepping into two representative learner perspectives from the Black-Liberation.Tech ecosystem. Ashley is exploring a science topic connected to community well-being, while Jasmine is working through information overload in a digital literacy course. These are composite learning scenarios, not real student records or graded assignments. So the information I'm going to insert is for purposes of providing you with an example. Since I'm no longer in school, I want to be able to show you what it can look like. And then you can try it and let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, so with that being said, I'm actually going to open up two Janaya GPT windows. So I have one open already. I'm going to open a second one. So this first one will be Ashley, and then the second one will be Jasmine. Okay, let's go back. So I'm going to, when you copy this prompt, you'll need to copy all of this information from the start where it says prompt template all the way down to your role is to be my tutor, not my replacement. Okay. Now I mentioned what Ashley is exploring. I'm going to paste the prompt here and I'm going to give it a read, this time with the information that I have for Ashley. So, hi, I'm taking AP Environmental Science. I am currently learning about environmental justice and how environmental risks can affect communities differently. Here is the passage, section, or concept I am trying to understand. Environmental justice is the principle that all people should receive fair protection from environmental hazards and have meaningful opportunities to participate in decisions that affect their communities. Environmental risks are not always distributed equally. Some neighborhoods experience greater exposure to air pollution, unsafe drinking water, extreme heat, flooding, or hazardous waste. These differences may be connected to income, housing policies, access to political power, and the long-term effects of discrimination. Researchers studying environmental justice examine scientific data as well as the lived experiences of community members. Their work can help communities identify problems, advocate for resources, and participate in developing solutions. Please help me understand this material. Do not simply summarize it. Instead, explain it using age-appropriate language, identify important vocabulary, define key terms, explain why the concept matters, connect it to ideas I may already know, including community health, climate change, and fairness. Create 5 questions that help me check my understanding. I'm responsible for learning this material myself. Your role is to be my tutor, not my replacement. So let's go ahead and hit the send button. We'll have to hit retry. It's okay, it happens. I'm working through the free version and not my paid subscription so that it will come up the way you will see it as opposed to if I were doing it myself. Because if I were doing it on my account, then it would take into consideration all the other conversations I've had and the responses would be impacted as a result. So here's what Janaya had to say. Great topic. Environmental justice is one of the places where science, society, and public policy all connect. Instead of thinking of it as who is exposed to pollution, think of it as asking 2 questions. Who faces environmental risk? Who gets a voice in fixing those risks? Both questions are important. The big idea. Imagine two neighborhoods. Neighborhood A has clean parks, lots of trees, safe drinking water, and is far from major factories. Neighborhood B is next to a busy highway and several factories. It has fewer trees, floods more often, and the drinking water has been contaminated before. Even though the people in both neighborhoods breathe air and drink water, their environmental conditions are very different. Environmental justice asks, is this fair? If not, why does it happen? And how can it be improved? Scientists don't just measure pollution, they also study who is affected by it. Important vocabulary. Environmental justice definition: the idea that everyone deserves equal protection from environmental hazards and an equal chance to participate in decisions about their environment. Think of it as fairness in environmental protection. Environmental hazards definition: anything in the environment that can harm people's health or ecosystems. Examples include air pollution, contaminated drinking water, toxic chemicals, flooding, extreme heat, and hazardous waste. Exposure definition: coming into contact with something in the environment. For example, breathing polluted air, drinking contaminated water, living near hazardous waste. Greater exposure usually means greater risk. Hazardous waste definition: waste that can harm people or the environment because it is toxic, corrosive, flammable, or otherwise dangerous. Examples include some industrial chemicals, certain pesticides, or heavy metals like lead or mercury. Political power. Definition: the ability of people or communities to influence government decisions. Communities with political influence may have greater success getting pollution cleaned up, parks built, stronger environmental protections. Community participation. Definition: residents helping make decisions about projects or policies that affect where they live. Examples include attending town meetings, giving public comments, voting, or working with local organizations. Why aren't environmental risks distributed equally? Environmental justice researchers have found that environmental problems often result from many factors working together, not a single cause. Some factors include income. Wealthier communities may have more resources to reduce risks or advocate for improvements. Housing policies. Past decisions about where people could live have affected where different groups of people are located today. Access to political power. Some communities have had more influence over environmental decisions than others. Long-term discrimination. Historical unfair treatment can have lasting effects on neighborhoods for decades. Notice that environmental justice asks why these patterns exist, not just whether pollution exists. Why do scientists study both data and people's experiences? Suppose a scientist measures air pollution. The measurements show pollution levels are high, but residents might also explain children have asthma attacks during certain times of the day, flooding happens every heavy rain, trucks pass through constantly, nearby industries create strong odors. The scientific measurements provide evidence, while the community members provide local knowledge about what daily life is actually like. Together, these give a fuller understanding of the problem, why this concept matters. Environmental science isn't only about ecosystems, it's also about people. If environmental hazards affect some communities more than others, those communities may experience more health problems, higher medical costs, missed school or work, lower quality of life. Understanding environmental justice helps scientists and decision makers identify where resources and solutions are most needed. Connections to ideas you already know. Community health. You've probably learned that clean air and clean water are important for health. Environmental justice asks, does every community have equal access to those healthy conditions? If one neighborhood has much more pollution than another, health outcomes may differ. Climate change. Climate change can increase extreme heat, flooding, stronger storms, or wildfire smoke. Not every community has the same ability to prepare for or recover from these events. For example, neighborhoods with fewer trees may become much hotter during heat waves. Low-lying areas may flood more often, or communities with fewer resources may have a harder time rebuilding after disasters. Environmental justice examines these unequal impacts. Fairness. Think about fairness at school. Imagine everyone's taking the same test, but one classroom has working lights and air conditioning, while another has broken lights and temperatures over 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius. Everyone is treated the same on paper, but the conditions are not equal. Environmental justice applies this idea to where people live. It asks whether everyone has a fair opportunity to live in a healthy environment. A helpful way to remember it. When you hear environmental justice, remember three questions. Who is exposed? Who experiences the environmental hazard? Why are they exposed? What historical, economic, or social factors contribute? How can the community help decide the solution? Are residents included in decision making? These questions capture the scientific, social, and ethical sides of this topic. Check your understanding. And so she provides 5 questions that you can try answering. In your own words, what is the difference between an environmental hazard and exposure to an environmental hazard? Why do environmental justice researchers study both scientific measurements, such as pollution levels, and the experiences of people who live in a community? How might historical housing policies contribute to unequal environmental risk today? Give one example of how climate change could make environmental justice issues more important. Imagine two neighborhoods have different levels of air pollution. What kinds of scientific evidence and community observations would you collect to understand whether an environmental justice issue exists? If you could answer those questions without looking back, you'll have a strong understanding of both the science and the reasoning behind environmental justice. Okay, so that was Ashley. What we're going to do, we're going to push pause here. And next week, we will come back. With all of that being said, thank you for listening to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renée Jordan. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and share, rate, and review the podcast to help it become more discoverable. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.